Hello everyone, I'm nekokittu, and welcome to episode 4 of my Let's Build a Farm building series. In the last episode, we built that. Well, both of those, actually, and also the mushroom in the background. We built a lot of stuff over there. Yeah, that is a barn, a windmill, there's a silo over there that's kind of blending into the background, and a mushroom. In fact, there's mushrooms everywhere. But in this episode, we're going to build the manor house. I wanted to go over here. This bit. Manor house. It's just building a house but bigger. So we got to take into consideration just a few things. So, as always, let's get on with the episode. Woo! To build the manor house, first of all, I've left this entire space clear because it's going to be quite big compared to some of the buildings here. I also didn't want any of the other buildings to really exceed like a floor and a half, just because the manor house itself, I plan to be quite tall. Definitely 2 floors, 3 if it has a tower. And I didn't want any of these smaller builds to overshadow what is realistically the centerpiece for this entire thing. I mean, this is the center, but that's the centerpiece. To begin with, I'm going to build the perimeter just to really section off where I want this build to be, and then we can start on the house. When you're planning bigger builds, it's very similar in the order which you do these. So you'll do like a shape and then build it up and then add the detail. But the thing to note with bigger builds is you're going to have bigger walls, which means a lot more flat space. And in these cases, texturing and detailing becomes quite a lot more important than they do on the smaller builds. For example, on the one behind me, I could get away with the top bit being sand and sandstone. Because it's part of the roof, it doesn't look that flat. But if I were to build a bigger house, sand and sandstone, it would all look the same colour. And that's not what we want. We want variety. As I like to say, depth and variation. Those are the keys to building. That's it. Nothing else. Just depth, variation. And also sometimes a lot of tears. A cup of tea. Yeah, those are also the keys to building. Depth, variation, tears, and a cup of tea. With that in mind, let's get building. Ignoring the fact that it may or may not be a mob farm, this is the build. Well, almost. As you can see, I've gone with the mud and mud brick down here, and I've tried to implement this oak to birch half gradient, I would say. It's more like a mishmash than a gradient, just to give the bottom of this quite flat wall area a little bit of depth. Definitely looks better from a distance. Yeah, that is pretty much the structure of the build. As you can see, any of the buildings that are more work related on the farm, I've made a much more muted colour palette, whereas the livable buildings, and especially the manor house, I've made a lot more colourful. This makes them stand out quite a bit more, but like I suggested, this isn't done. It's still quite flat, and it's not a grand building. Well, it is a grand building, but it's not like, wow. And the way we can fix this is putting a little bit more depth into the build, because so far we've got texture and variety, but we don't have any depth. And like I said earlier, it's depth and variation, not variation and variation. You can't double variatiate. And the way I'm going to do that is just using signs and buttons of birch and oak. But we're going to mix it up. I'm going to put the birch on the oak, and I'm going to put the oak on the birch. And with what might be considered too many buttons, it just gives the build a little bit more depth. Now, if we were feeling it, we could also do this on the brick, because the brick matches quite well with jungle, but I'm not feeling it, so we're not going to do that. That is not the vibe. And if we really wanted to make some stuff pop, we can use signs. So for example, corners like this. or even just extending these planks here. And especially up in this area where it's looking a little bit more flat, signs just help bring it out a bit. And on corners like this, where really putting anything would just look kind of weird, I'm just going to add some contrast. So a couple of trapdoors. It just makes that corner there look a little bit better. Now another way to improve this build is this roof line here. This is very flat. Compared to the pointy roofs and the nice like triangle bits here, this is not great. When you're building a roof, you definitely don't want it to look too flat. So like over here, we have these little nodules and a chimney, and it stops the roof looking all the same level. So I'm gonna put a little bit of decoration here with some spikes and a chimney. And just by adding a couple of simple spikes and a small chimney there, it already makes this roof look a lot better. Especially on builds like this, with it being so big, you need to fill in whatever flat gaps you can. And that brings us to these flat gaps right here. Now, dormers would look okay, but I feel like they'd cramp the place considering just how many roofs there are. So my only other option, there is no other option, sadly. The only option I have is to cover the thing in flowers. Tragic. I always think adding greenery to a build is a good idea, but that might just be because I really like plants. And while we're on the topic of greenery, before we move inside, I'm going to do the garden. I want this place to feel very posh farm, and the poshest farm I can think of is a vineyard. So I'm going to build a vineyard. If you don't know what one of those is, it's where grapes grow so they can make wine. I'm going to make a vineyard. With just a few of these placed down, it looks a lot more vineyardy. I have put a lot of these little pink flowers down. I don't have an obsession, they're just really cute. And honestly, we need more of these. I tried to make a little sort of wheelbarrow just because it feels like it would fit. It's not great, but we work with what we've got. And I'll save this bit for later because now I just want to do some of the inside. Alright, I've just put a little door on. Nice and simple. Spruce door, trapdoors, easy peasy. And I might have to deal with the monster situation in there. Just because there seems to be quite a few of them. It shouldn't take too long. Alright, with that problem dealt with, we can get on with the interior. But I will warn you, interiors are not my specialty. I usually just leave the buildings empty and I move on to another building. But I'm going to try. So just like the tree, if this isn't good, don't come for me. Don't, please. I'm fragile. But I think we'll start with this area, which is lowered down so that you have these big ceiling height windows. And I think this would be a great place for a living area. So here, I'm just going to place this little glass wall just so it separates up here and down here. I'm also feeling like a carpet would be good down here, and I want a green carpet, so I'm going to mix it in with this green concrete powder just to give it a little bit of texture. Putting in the green concrete powder just stops it being all one flat colour, and it just gives it more like a worn feeling, like people walk on it. I'm going to put some furniture in here, a bit of lighting, and then I'm going to show you a couple little tricks. Alright, with just some simple furniture in, you can already tell that it's more like a living room. I'm going to do a few little things that make this stand out. The first I want to do with the ceiling. It's all flat and one colour, and that's not ideal, so I'm going to move this beam all the way across and raise it by half a block. You can see that even with the beams just in, and I've done nothing else further, it already gives the room a little bit of elevation and definitely gives the roof a bit of depth. It just makes the place look a bit homey. The first little building trick I want to do is this window here. It's very open and I want to put some curtains in. So I'm going to be using green and lime just to layer it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the green, and then I'm going to have a middle one, which is sort of a transition gradient. And then we're going to have the bottom one just be lime. So if we go in here and we choose the gradient, and then when we layer the banners, you can see it provides a little bit more of a gradient. And it just creates these layered curtains that aren't all one banner colour. Next thing I want to do is I want to put a TV here, but if I put any blocks here, it'll cause these panes here at the back to do this. This is not what we want. This is bad. And also, realistically, if I was going to put a TV here, it would have to be a painting, Oh, that's a big painting. But also, everybody knows the paintings, and I'm putting them around the house, so putting one on the TV, not ideal. But for this, we're gonna need a lot of space. Somewhere out in the ocean. Just where no one goes. And we're just gonna want to put a giant square of black blocks. I already did this for a previous thing. Really, you can put any pattern on it, but I'm not good enough at maps to draw on a map. So you take your map like that. Now the map is the big black square. And then we're gonna go off the square, get a cartography table and a glass pane, and then we take our map, put the glass pane on it, and it locks it. So now, even if we were to go in the middle here, giant mess, it wouldn't update this map. If we were to make a new map, it would be on that map. But this one, locked. This is how we make a television. And just putting some item frames here. Make a TV. I just have one last thing to do, and that's this couch here. If you go a block down and place banners, so, and then place your furniture on top of the banner, you get cushions. That's it. That's the entire trick. Just putting cushions on the couch. So now we can sit on our cushion couch and watch our fake TV. I think I'm going to leave the living room here because this is really the best I can do with vanilla. And now I'm going to move on to the kitchen. I'm just going to do a little bit of finagling here and come up with some sort of kitchen design and then talk through the process. Because it's a lot to do it both at once. Alright, and we've got a very simple little kitchen. To start here, I've got this sort of breakfast bar with 2 little iron plates, and I'm using the pickles as sort of cups. Just because they kind of look like cups when they don't have the pickle in them. Of course, plenty of storage. A kitchen needs a lot of storage. And here, underneath here, I have 2 campfires, and I've put smokers on top. And then this is where the fridge is going to go, and this is where I'm going to do another little banner trick. Alright, taking my white banner and some black dye, I'm gonna try and attempt to make handles. Oh, are you trying out the fridge here, sir? Do you love refrigerators? And now to make the base, I'm gonna use another old trick, and that is an item frame with a pressure plate. Rotate that bad boy all the way around and pop the banner over it, and you get drawer handles. And with that, we've got a little kitchen made. I'm gonna do a few of the things down here, and then I'm gonna talk through them, just to sort of speed up the process. And with that, I've done a little bit of the interior down here. I've made this into a dining room, and of course I've used the same trick with the banners. And here for the chairs, I've done a campfire with 2 signs and a door. I will admit though, from here it looks great, but there's no campfire or signs here because there's no space. So as long as we don't actually try and sit at the table, nobody will find out our mistakes. And I've turned this into a little library, just somewhere you can sit, really chill, read some books. You know, they're not actually readable, but you imagine they are. And it's got one of the nicer views. And then I added this little shelf here, and under here is a chest for you to store all your music discs. Now, all that's left to do is up here, and I'll have a finished house. Oh hey, you here for the house tour of my newly decorated house? Well, come on in. Oh, you didn't see that. Come on in. So yeah, as you know, downstairs is pretty much exactly the same as it was, but now I have decorated the upstairs. Hey, claps all around. We have this hallway here, which is just very lightly decorated. And then working round, we have bedroom number 1, which personally is one of my favorite ones. This is so cute. The bathroom, and I've made this mirror, which is just a blue gradient and the black bevel around the outside. Bedroom number 2, it's got its own little study area, and this one is bunk beds. And of course, the master bedroom. I used the same technique I used on the couch downstairs to make these banners, and then, you know, wardrobe, shelves, and an ensuite. It also has access to the balcony, so you have a very nice view of the farm. And the last bit that I did was the attic, so I've put the enchanting setup up here. And my amazing redstone knowledge has allowed me to create a hidden switch. Wow! It's not very good. But, you know, if you can build, you can't do redstone. That's the whole thing, right? So yeah, I just use a couple of things like putting the barrels here in the back wall, and of course adding carpets. I put a fireplace here just to make the place feel a little bit more cozy. But to finish off the episode, I'm gonna do a little bit of gardening, and then I'm gonna finish this build. And I mean it. This is almost done. Really, I just want to put some stuff up on the hills there, like custom trees and a couple more mushrooms, but nothing that we haven't already gone through. So I'm going to run through that real quick, and then we can see the finished build. Alright, and to finish off this build, I've gone and I've put some of these custom spruce trees just all along the tops of the cliffs here, and that stops them from looking so bare, and it kind of rounds off the build. I've also gone and put some more mushrooms everywhere, including a couple of big ones, just sort of hidden around the place, and I think that that really rounds off the build, and I can call it pretty much complete. Since this is the end of this episode, why don't we take a little tour of everything we've done? In episode 1, I went through the stages of building a house like this. We talked about texturing, we talked about shape, and we talked about the stages to turn a simple box house into something like this. In episode 2, I did the garden. I went through creating water features, including how to make a cave like that with only 3 blocks, the importance of texturing your waterbed, and the stages on how to make custom trees. In episode 3, we built a few more buildings around the place, including this stable, this barn, and this windmill. And I described the process of building organics like mushrooms, along with little tips and tricks, including this little mushroom right here. And of course today, episode 4, we built the manor house. We learned the importance of depth and variation, and also did a little bit more gardening, along with adding a lot of custom trees and rounding off the build. And with all that done, don't forget, if you like the video, like it, subscribe, the usual. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye!